She didn't just reject you, she deconstructed you, piece by agonizing piece. Every text you sent, every gift you gave, every time you swallowed your own needs to accommodate hers, it wasn't a deposit into an account of love. It was ammunition you handed her to use against you. You operated under the delusion that your devotion was a currency that could purchase her respect. But in the brutal marketplace of human attraction, your brand of kindness was worthless. It was perceived not as strength, but as a desperate plea for validation from a man who had none of his own. You were not her partner. You were her project, a fixer-upper she eventually decided wasn't worth the effort. You are replaying it now, aren't you? That final moment. The look in her eyes, a mixture of pity and impatience. The words she used, so carefully chosen to sound gentle, yet they landed with the force of a wrecking ball, shattering the fragile reality you had built around her. You're combing through the wreckage, searching for the black box, the one mistake that led to the crash. But you will not find it. Because the flaw wasn't in a single action. It was in your entire philosophy of existence. You brought a code of honor and fairness to a battlefield of primal instinct and unspoken power dynamics. She didn't turn down a man. She dismissed a servant who had forgotten his place. She walked away because you made it easy for her. You had already surrendered your territory, your sovereignty, your very sense of self, long before she delivered the final blow. Remember the silence after the door closed? Or the dead air on the phone line? The world outside your window kept moving, the sun kept shining, people kept laughing, completely oblivious to the fact that your personal universe had just imploded. In that single, crushing moment, you ceased to be the main character in your own story. You became a ghost, haunting the ruins of a future that would never exist. The identity you had so meticulously crafted, with her as its centerpiece, dissolved into a fog of shame and confusion. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was a strategic demolition. You had invested your entire emotional portfolio in a single volatile asset, and it had just been declared utterly worthless, leaving you emotionally bankrupt. Your thumb hovered over her contact, a pathetic Pavlovian twitch, a desperate hope for a message of reversal, of regret. But the screen remained dark. That silence was her final and most profound statement. You are now irrelevant to her forward momentum. This is the point where most men break, but it is also the point where a select few are forged. The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, a master of brutal truths, would have observed your suffering not with sympathy, but with a cold, profound understanding. He saw the world not as a place of reason and justice, but as the bloody arena for a blind, insatiable force he called the will to live. This will is the primal, unconscious drive within all living things, to survive, to dominate, to perpetuate itself. It cares nothing for your feelings, your sacrifices, or your moral calculus. As Schopenhauer stated, a man can be himself only so long as he is alone. In her presence, you were never truly yourself. You were a carefully constructed performance, designed for an audience of one. You were an actor, desperate for applause, and when the applause stopped, you forgot who you were without the role. Your constant need for her approval, your willingness to contort yourself to fit her expectations, these were not signals of love. They were signals of weakness, a scent in the air that her most primal instincts, the very manifestation of that will, could not help but interpret as a liability. The will does not seek a partner who is nice. It seeks a partner who embodies strength, independence, and an unwavering commitment to his own path. You offered her your entire kingdom, but a woman is not attracted to a king who hands over his crown. She is attracted to the power of the throne itself, to the man who occupies it with unshakable authority. The searing pain you feel right now is not a curse, it is a gift. It is a biological alarm system, screaming at you that your entire strategy for navigating the world is fatally flawed. That rejection was not a final verdict on your worth as a man. It was a brutal, yet indispensable, masterclass in the unwritten laws of power and attraction. What if you could harness the energy of that pain? What if you could take the cold, hard truth that shattered you and use it as the raw material to build an unbreakable internal fortress? A reality so solid, so self-contained, that no single person could ever again wield the power to bring it down. What if you could execute a complete reversal of the power dynamic, transforming from the man who craves her validation into the man whose validation is the ultimate prize? This is not about playing games or seeking revenge. This is about a fundamental resurrection of the masculine spirit. It begins by abandoning the comforting lies you've been told and embracing the cold, strategic truths that Schopenhauer dared to reveal. Before we dissect the first law of this new reality, subscribe to Dominio Psicologico and activate all notifications. This is not a channel of shallow reassurances. It is an arsenal for the mind. Like this video to signal your readiness to burn the old maps and navigate by a new star. And in the comments below, I demand 2 pieces of intelligence. What country are you watching from? And what was the specific moment, the exact interaction, where you realized your kindness was being interpreted as a strategic weakness? Your testimony is not just a story. It is a data point in our collective mission to master the hidden architecture of human desire. The architecture of your downfall was not built in a day. It was a slow, methodical construction, and you were its chief architect, laying each brick of concession with your own hands. You perceived the rejection as a sudden earthquake, but it was merely the final, inevitable collapse of a structure that had been rotting from its foundation for months, perhaps years. Let us perform a cold, strategic autopsy on your loss of authority. This is not for mourning. This is for intelligence gathering. The first phase of your surrender was emotional concession. It began subtly. She had a bad day at work, and her dark cloud of energy filled the room. Your own plans, your own state of mind, your own internal peace became secondary. Your mission was no longer your own. It was to manage her emotions. You thought you were being supportive, a good partner. But from a Schopenhauerian perspective, you were communicating a fatal weakness. You were signaling that your internal state was not self-governed but was, in fact, contingent upon hers. The will to live, that primal force driving attraction, does not seek a caretaker. It seeks a fellow sovereign power. When you abandoned your own frame to enter hers, you ceased to be a king in your own right and became a courtier, a servant to the queen's mood. She tested. You yielded. She won. This pattern repeated itself. The movie you wanted to watch was sacrificed for the one she preferred. The friends you wanted to see were put on hold because she wasn't feeling it. Each concession was a micro-surrender, a small piece of territory ceded in a war you didn't even realize you were fighting. You called it compromise. The universe, in its brutal honesty, called it defeat. From emotional concession, you descended into the next circle of hell, the perpetual search for validation. Your actions lost their intrinsic purpose. You no longer went to the gym to forge your own body and discipline. You went, hoping she would notice the results. You didn't buy her a gift out of a genuine overflow of abundance, but as a desperate bid for a specific reaction, a smile, a thank you, a moment of affection. Your giving was not an act of strength. It was a transaction. You were a beggar, offering trinkets in exchange for scraps of approval. Remember asking, "Is everything okay?" Not because you sensed a genuine problem, but because her silence for the last hour had thrown you into a state of internal panic. Your question was not about her, it was about you. It was a desperate plea. "Please, tell me that I am still valid in your eyes. Reassure me that my existence has not been revoked." Schopenhauer would see this as the antithesis of power. A man who is truly grounded in his own being does not need the world to validate him. His actions are an expression of his own will, not a request for permission to exist. Your neediness became a scent in the air, a pheromone of desperation that her primal instincts found repulsive. She didn't consciously think, This man is weak. She felt it, on a biological level. The will within her, programmed to seek strength and self-sufficiency, began to recoil. This dependency metastasized into a complete loss of emotional control. Her text message response time became the barometer of your self-worth for the day. A quick, warm reply, and you felt a surge of relief, of borrowed confidence. A delayed, one-word answer, and your stomach would drop, your mind racing through 1,000 possible failures on your part. You had outsourced your emotional regulation to her. She held the remote control to your soul, and she knew it. This is where her silence became a weapon. Her silence is dominance, not inattention. When she would grow quiet, pulling away emotionally, you would scramble. You would fill the void with chatter, with questions, with apologies for crimes you hadn't committed. You were terrified of the silence, because in that silence, you were forced to confront the terrifying reality that you had no internal foundation of your own. You were a hollow structure, defined only by her presence. The man who cannot endure silence, especially a woman's silence, is a man who cannot endure himself. He reveals that his peace is not his own property. He is a tenant, and she is the landlord, capable of evicting him at any moment. And so, you would break. You would do anything to make the silence stop. Which brings us to the final act of capitulation, the premature apology. Think back to the last major argument, the one where you held a logical, defensible position. But she met your logic with a storm of emotion, with tears, or with the icy chill of withdrawal. The tension became unbearable for you. The conflict was a deviation from the validation you so desperately craved. And so, you did the unthinkable. You apologized. You said the words, "I'm sorry," not because you believed you were wrong, but because you could no longer tolerate her disapproval. In that moment, you did not resolve a conflict. You lost the war. When you apologized, you signed your surrender. You communicated to her, in the clearest possible terms, that your own principles, your own sense of truth, were less important than her emotional comfort. You taught her that her feelings held more authority than your reality. From that point on, your defeat was guaranteed. It was only a matter of time. She tested you, and you failed. You demonstrated that under pressure, your spine would dissolve, and the will, in its ruthless search for a force to rely on, turned away from you for good. Now you may be thinking, this is absurd. I was just being a caring, sensitive partner. I was trying to avoid conflict. This is the lie the weak man tells himself to justify his own cowardice. You weren't avoiding conflict. You were running from it. You weren't being sensitive. You were being spineless. You traded long-term respect for short-term comfort. Schopenhauer's philosophy is a brutal corrective to this delusion. The universe does not reward nice. It rewards strong. It does not respect appeasement. It respects power. Your attempts to apply a moral code of fairness and kindness to a primal dynamic of power and attraction were like bringing a book of poetry to a gunfight. You lost because you were playing the wrong game entirely. The fall is not visible. It happens in the silence, in the hesitation, in the yes said out of fear, in the apology offered from a position of weakness. No one is coming to save you from this truth. You must confront it, or you will be doomed to repeat this cycle of surrender for the rest of your life. This diagnosis is the first, most painful step toward a cure. If you recognize the bitter taste of these mistakes in your own history, then it is time to stop the bleeding. It's time to choose a new philosophy. Subscribe to Dominio Psicologico and activate all notifications, because every video is a strategic briefing for the war you are in, whether you acknowledge it or not. Like this video as a sworn oath to yourself that your days of surrender are over. And now, I want you to perform an act of radical honesty in the comments. Answer this question: what was the specific boundary you allowed to be crossed? the one you knew was a violation of your own principles, simply to keep the peace. Confess the moment you chose comfort over your own sovereignty. Your admission is the first step in reclaiming that lost territory. There is no going back for the weak. There is only the construction of the new. Let that sentence burn itself into your mind, because it is the first and most important law of your resurrection. The man you were, the one who begged for validation with his actions, who surrendered his frame, who apologized for his own convictions, that man is dead. You will not mourn him. You will not try to revive him. You will bury him in an unmarked grave and build a monument of power on top of it. Your reconstruction is not an emotional journey of healing. It is a cold, tactical operation. It is a military campaign waged against your own weakness, and it begins with 3 direct commands. First command: cut the excess. Amputate. Effective immediately, you will cease all contact. This is not the dramatic, theatrical silence of a wounded man hoping to be noticed. This is the silent, efficient cut of a surgeon removing a cancerous tumor. You will not send a final text. You will not write a letter explaining your newfound philosophy. You will not block her on social media in a fit of pique, an action that screams emotional reaction. You will simply vanish from her reality. You will become a ghost. This act of reinstalling scarcity is your first move to reclaim power. Why? Because your constant availability was the currency of your weakness. You were always there, a predictable utility, as common and unvalued as tap water. By cutting off the supply completely and without warning, you create a vacuum. You transform from a known quantity into an unknown variable. The human mind, and especially the female subconscious, abhors a vacuum. It will be forced to ask a question it never had to before. Where did he go? This question is the seed of respect. You are no longer the man chasing, but the man whose absence creates a problem to be solved. Be an absence that carries weight, not a presence that begs. Second command: install the silence. If and when she reaches out to probe this new reality, and she will, because your sudden change in strategy disrupts her sense of control, your response will be the second phase of the operation. You will impose a silence so profound it becomes a statement in itself. Her text message, once the trigger for your anxiety, is now nothing more than light on a screen. You will not respond immediately. You may not respond at all. If a response is tactically necessary, it will be delayed, minimal, and devoid of emotion. A yes, a no, or a simple thumbs-up emoji delivered hours or days later. This is not a game. It is a reconditioning process. You are teaching her, and more importantly, teaching yourself, that her communication is no longer a summons for the king. It is a message delivered to the throne room, which may or may not be acknowledged. Not responding is dominance. It communicates that your focus, your energy, your time are occupied by matters of far greater importance than her fleeting curiosity. The man who wants to be loved will be discarded. The man who imposes presence, through a silence more powerful than any words, will be feared. And fear is a far more stable foundation for respect than affection ever was. Do not reconquer the old dynamic. Replace it with a sharper silence. Third command: control the reaction and rebuild the empire. This silence is not passive. It is the shield behind which you execute the most critical part of the plan. A total and ruthless focus on elevating your position in every conceivable hierarchy. Your pain is now fuel. Your humiliation is now your directive. You will channel every ounce of that dark energy into forging a new reality, brick by brutal brick. This reconstruction has 4 fronts. Physically, the gym is your new temple. Every drop of sweat is a baptism, washing away the old you. You are not building a body to attract her. You are forging a weapon and learning to wield it. You are building a physical presence that commands respect before you even speak. Financially, your career, your enterprise, your investments, this is your territory. You will attack your professional goals with the ferocity of a starving wolf. Your ambition is no longer a means to provide for her, but an end in itself. You are building an empire, and a king is defined by his kingdom, not his queen. Socially, you will cull your circle. Any friends who coddled your weakness are to be discarded. You will seek out and build alliances with men who are stronger, richer, and more disciplined than you are. Your social life is not for comfort, it is for strategy. You will become a man of value within a network of valuable men. Symbolically, you must find your mission. The one singular purpose that animates your existence. A goal so vast and compelling that a relationship is, at best, a complementary component, not the centerpiece. A man without a mission is a ship without a rudder, and no woman is attracted to a man adrift at sea. She is drawn to the captain who is navigating toward a new world, whether she is on board or not. This entire process is the practical application of Schopenhauer's brutal wisdom. He wrote, "The cheapest sort of pride is national pride. It is a sign of a man's own miserable nature that he has nothing to be proud of but the quality which he shares with millions of others." You took pride in being a good boyfriend, a quality you shared with millions of other supplicating men. It was the cheapest form of pride, and it made you worthless. Your new pride will be forged in the fire of self-overcoming. It will be a pride built on tangible, undeniable achievement, on the body you built, the wealth you generated, the mission you pursued. This is not a hope. It is a strategic plan. You are not working on yourself to win her back. You are executing a scorched earth policy on your former self to build a new man from the ashes, a man whose reality is so powerful and self-contained that her approval is rendered utterly irrelevant. The transformation is not complete until your mindset has fundamentally shifted. Subscribe to Dominio Psicologico and activate all notifications, because every piece of content here is a weapon for your new arsenal in this war against mediocrity. Like this video as a personal contract, sealing your commitment to this new path. And now, for your first tactical assignment, answer this in the comments below. What is the one comfortable weak habit you will eliminate from your life in the next 24 hours? And what is the one hard, disciplined action you will install in its place? I don't want your excuses. I want your operational command. The old you is gone. The thirst for dominance is all that remains. The universe has a cold sense of irony. It orchestrates the final act, not as a dramatic confrontation, but as a quiet, almost insignificant event. And so, it will happen. You will see her again. It will not be because you engineered it, but because your new empire, your new trajectory, will inevitably intersect with the ruins of her world. Perhaps at a gallery opening, a high-level networking event, or a place you now frequent that was once far beyond your station. You will not be looking for her. Your gaze will be fixed on your objective, your mission. But you will feel her eyes on you before you see her. It is the primitive recognition of a predator sensing a shift in the hierarchy of the jungle. When you turn, there will be no jolt of pain, no surge of anger, no flicker of desperate hope. There will only be the calm, cold processing of data. You will see a woman, frozen in time, still operating on an old emotional software, looking at a man who has become something entirely new. She will approach, a tentative smile on her face, the same smile she once used as a tool to manage your expectations. But the tool is now obsolete. It finds no purchase. She will say your name, and then she will say the 5 words every man in your former position dreams of hearing. You look amazing. This is the test, the final exam. The old you would have preened, would have seen this as a victory, a sign that your work had paid off, that you had finally won her approval. The new you simply registers it as an observation. You will offer a slight, controlled nod, not a smile. A nod, an acknowledgement of a fact stated. "Thank you," you will say. Your voice calm, your tone neutral. Your eyes already beginning to drift back toward the person you were actually engaging with, a person of consequence. Her opening gambit has failed. She expected to see a spark of the old neediness, a hint that her validation still mattered. She found nothing. She found a void. a polished wall of indifference. She will try again, probing for a weakness. "I've been thinking about you," she might say. This is her second move. An attempt to invoke a shared past, to re-establish an emotional connection. Schopenhauer would recognize this for what it is: a desperate act of the will, trying to reclaim a resource it once controlled and discarded. Your response is not to engage with the content of her statement. You will not ask, "Oh, really? What about?" That would be a fatal error, a reopening of a door you have welded shut. Instead, you will treat her words as irrelevant noise. You will give a non-committal, "I see," and then you will physically turn your attention back to your mission. You will not excuse yourself. You will not explain. You will simply pivot. Your attention, your most valuable resource, is no longer hers to command. In that moment, the power dynamic does not just flip, it is annihilated. She is left standing in the wake of your indifference, a ghost from a past you no longer inhabit. Her power was always contingent on your reaction. Your need for her approval was the fuel for her dominance. Now, without that fuel, her engine stalls. She is experiencing, for the first time, the chilling power of true irrelevance. The silence you are projecting is not the wounded silence of a man playing a game. It is the profound, heavy silence of a mountain. It does not argue. It does not explain. It simply is, and its sheer, unshakable presence crushes her. This is the nature of emotional vengeance. It is not an act of aggression. It is an act of transcendence. The greatest revenge is not her suffering. It is her slow, agonizing realization that her opinion, her presence, her very existence has become a matter of complete and utter indifference to you. You spent years trying to understand the rules of her game, believing that if you just played it well enough, you would win her respect. The ultimate move was not to checkmate her king. It was to flip the entire board over, walk away from the table, and begin building your own kingdom on new ground. A kingdom where you are the only legislator, the only judge, the only king. Her attempts to re-engage are the pathetic pleas of a deposed monarch, begging for an audience in a court that no longer recognizes her authority. She didn't just lose you, she lost the power to define you. This is the final law: respect is a shadow. It is not given. It is not earned through supplication. It is not negotiated. It is cast by a figure of substance. You spent your life trying to beg for the shadow, without first building the man who could cast it. Your mission was never to win her back. It was to build a man so powerful, so grounded in his own reality, so utterly consumed by his own purpose, that her absence or presence would make no material difference to his state of being. You must become the sun, a self-generating source of heat and light. Whether she chooses to orbit you or fly off into the cold darkness of space is her decision, and it is one that has zero impact on your gravitational pull. The pain she inflicted was a gift. It was the catalyst. The fire she thought would destroy you was merely the forge that burned away your weakness and tempered your will into steel. She was not your downfall. She was your creator. She was the unwitting architect of the man she can now only admire from a distance, a man she can never again touch, a man she will forever fail to understand. She did not break you. She revealed the blueprint for the man you were forced to become. Your resurrection is now complete. The path forward is not about her or any woman. It is about the relentless expansion of your empire, the unwavering devotion to your mission, the cold, beautiful, and solitary pursuit of your own legend. This is your final briefing. Subscribe to Dominio Psicologico and activate all notifications to ensure you are armed for the next phase of your reign. Like this video as a final salute to the weak man you left behind in the ashes. And now I leave you with a final question for the battlefield below, a question that defines your new reality. When she inevitably sends that late-night text, the one that says, "I miss you," Will you see it as an opportunity for connection, or will you see it for what it truly is? A request for you to abandon your throne and revisit your own prison cell. Your answer in the comments is your declaration of sovereignty,